Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second Community Wellness Roundtable of 2023. My name is Elisha Barrientos, Community Engagement Specialist within the Research Centers in Minority Institutions, or RCMI, program here at Howard University College of Medicine. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. I am your host for this evening, joined by my colleagues, Ms. Kristen Holmes and Ms. Karen Parker. Again, we want to remind you that this call is being recorded. I will hand it over to my colleague, Kristen, to share what we do here at RCMI.
Thank you, Elisha, and good evening, everyone. My name is Kristen Holmes, and I am a Community Engagement Specialist on our team. Our RCMI program focuses on enhancing and developing the necessary research infrastructure that ensures Howard University's ability to contribute to the resolution of diseases that disproportionately affect underserved and minority populations. Our group, the Community Engagement Core's primary goal is to ensure that RCMI-supported research addresses the needs and interests of our local community. To achieve this, we do three things. We partner with local community organizations to address health-related concerns, promote community participation in research and partnership with research and study design and execution, and ensure research findings are shared with relevant communities. That's why tonight's conversation with you is critical to our work. This core is led by Dr. Carla Williams. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Kristen, for sharing what we do. Now that we shared who we are and what we do here at RCMI, CEC, we want to see who's in the room, and just what is your relationship with youth, what it is that you do. So we have a quick poll here that should show up right about now. And you are free to choose all that apply, as we recognize that many people here have many multiple roles. We'll give some space for you to answer. And as you answer, we have on the call Dr. Carla Williams, who is our director, and she will share with us the 6 R's of research to provide guidelines for ethical research for those who are interested in considering and participating in clinical research trials. Dr. Williams?
Thank you, Elisha, and welcome everyone. Thank you again for joining us this evening. Our overall goal for our program is not only to bring relevant information to our communities that can help people to make decisions about things related to their health and well-being, but also to ensure that we are all good consumers of health information. And many of us are going to be exposed to health information throughout our daily lives. If you touch or see a screen during the day, someone is going to perhaps tell you what's good for you and what you should do, or what's bad for you and maybe what you should not do. So it's important to be smart consumers of that information. And just like we want to be smart consumers when we shop for things that we need every day, we also want to be smart consumers of research. So to briefly tell you about the 6 things that we think we should all look for in research, I'll use a brief analogy using the concept of apples and apple pie. So if I go to the store and I want to shop for apples, it may be important that the store has a wide variety of different types of apples. Or maybe I'm someone who really wants to eat organically and I want to find organic apples. Or maybe if you're like me, you're price conscious and you look for what's on sale. We all look for different things as we consume products. And so in research, we all may look for different things that are specifically important to us. So tonight, as we have this conversation, listen in for the things that really might be important for you and help you to make decisions about your health and well-being. The 6 R's that we talk about to be smart consumers of research include representation. So again, with those apples, maybe it's about variety, but in research, it's about the diversity of people who were participating in the study. Did the study have a wide variety of individuals with different experiences and backgrounds to make sure that the research is relevant to a wide range of individual experiences? Or maybe you're more concerned about regulation, meaning the ethics of how the research was done. So maybe it's important for you to ensure that the research was reviewed in advance and that the work was carried out not only in an ethical way, but in a way that really respected the individuals who were part of the study. The next two sort of go together. And if we go back to the apple example, it's sort of like your recipe for perhaps an apple pie. If you have a good recipe, or in research, as we call it, a good approach, then we're going to do that research the same way just about every time. And that means each time we're going to get just about the same product and the same outcomes. So in research, we talk about that recipe as being the rigor, the steps, or the instructions that we use. And we want to make sure that those instructions or that plan was followed. And if we do that, we would expect that each time we're going to get very similar results. And that's what we refer to as replication. Or maybe what's important to you is, was the research or the recommendations that you're seeing reviewed by people who have not only scientific experience, but real life experience with the recommendation? And so maybe you want to find out who reviewed and who recommended the information and why. And then finally, relevance. And that is the so what question. So in this instance is, how will this research impact your daily life? And some research is more relevant to how we live our lives, and some is less relevant. So maybe you're going to look for and pay more attention to research that has high relevance to your life. And to kind of conclude with my apple example, maybe you're like me and you don't necessarily like apple pie, and maybe what you want is really a peach cobbler. And so I'm going to look for things that are going to be more important and relevant to my life. So again, tonight, as we listen in, maybe one of these is really important to you. And think and hear if you're hearing about the important part of research that you're concerned about, and ask questions to our speakers tonight and be part of that conversation. Thank you, Elisha, for the time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams, for sharing that. I want to turn it over to Kristen before we introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Elisha. Yes, so before we introduce our speakers, we want to make this disclaimer. This event is not a substitution for a meeting with a mental health professional. Please contact a healthcare provider for a referral to a licensed mental health counselor. For emergency mental health needs, please call 988. Thank you. Back to you, Elisha.
Thank you, Kristen. I want to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker this evening is an associate professor here at Howard University School of Social Work. She is also a health disparities researcher for many research grants and a principal investigator for a project on asthma health for children in DC public health housing. Please welcome Dr. Meirong Liu to the roundtable as she shares her research on youth mental health during the pandemic. Dr. Liu?
Thank you, Elisha, and thank you for this opportunity to be here today. I'm honored and excited to share our research with the center and also with community. As Dr. Williams talked about, the research, our goal is to serve the community. And I will touch the 6 R's in the process of my presentation. Today, I want to share with you about our project on teens' social media engagement during the COVID-19 pandemic, a time series examination of posting and emotion on Reddit. Now, this research was published at a International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health in 2021. And the authors, you can see there are Drs. Zhang, Dr. Chang, and I want to notice that there's Yifei Li, Now remember, Dr. Colin Williams talked about the first R in the 6 R's of research is called representation. Does the research include people like you? So when we construct this idea of examining teenagers' social media engagement, we were having a difficult time to look at what is the most popular social media among teenagers and what language teenagers use on social media. So we decided, okay, we are going to include one teen researchers. Yifei Li, she was a high school student when we conducted this research. So she gave a valuable input about teens' social media engagement and what the language teen post on social media. So next slide, please. The COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in more than 103 million infected cases and more than 1 million deaths in the US. The pandemic not only compromised economy, but also has impact on people's psychological well-being. And this is especially true for children and youth who are especially vulnerable to the impact because children and youth are in the developmental stage that are particularly sensitive to the environmental impact and stress. Next slide, please. So when examining the previous literature, we noticed the pandemic's impact on youth mental health can be isolation and loneliness due to safety measures during the pandemic, such as social distancing, etc. And it caused youth to develop anxiety and stress because of uncertainty of the pandemic, fear of getting infected, and fear of family and loved ones getting infected, etc. It also caused a disruption of routines and activities. Schools were closed, extracurricular activities were suspended, time with friends was significantly reduced. It also faced financial stress, and the youth in this period of time, they face increased screen time and also reduced access to mental health services due to the shutdown. Now, all the impact also vary widely among youth, depending factors, for example, such as their pre-existing mental health condition, their socioeconomic status, family structures, etc. Now, pandemic has disproportionate impact on the underserved youth in terms of their mental health. And here's why. Underserved youth are more likely to face increased risk of exposure due to the fact many of them lived in multi-generational households or in high-rise density housing. So they have increased risk of exposure to the virus. Also, the racial discrimination increased significantly during the pandemic and therefore has impact on the youth mental health. Underserved youth and their families also face increased economic hardship that leads to food insecurity, housing instability, etc. They also faced significantly more likely to face reduced access to healthcare, such as lack of insurance, language barriers, trust with healthcare providers, etc. Underserved youth are also more likely to face educational challenge during the pandemic, such as lack of access to technology, limited support for remote learning during the pandemic shutting down. And they also face greater level of trauma and loss for families and loved ones. Now, social media in the recent years has been a major means of interaction among people. In social media, people create, share, and exchange information and ideas in their virtual online community. The major social media we use include, for example, Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, Instagram, TikTok, etc. Social media has especially been a big part of youth daily life, even more so during the pandemic. Research has shown that data that about almost half of the teenagers were online, quote unquote, almost constantly. and nearly all, 97% of the teenagers use at least one type of social media. Social media has become a critical way of seeking and sharing health information, getting support, as well as making health decisions. And also, such engagement in social media is related with users' psychological well-being in the pandemic environment. We also found in the research, different age athletic group tends to use different types of social media. Reddit has been identified to be more likely to be used by teenagers. And therefore, in our study of social media's impact on youth mental health, we choose Reddit as our study subject. So on Reddit, what is Reddit? Reddit is a social media, is an online community where users can share and view posts and post comments, attach pictures and videos, express their reaction to news and have discussion threads, etc. It has become one of the most popular websites globally. So we use the Reddit as our study platform. Another thing about our project, it is we designed an interdisciplinary research project. Social work researchers developed the idea of examining youth mental health status on social media, but the data was also analyzed and provided by our colleagues in computer science. So data was collected during the time of January the 1st, 2020 to December the 31st, 2020. And our research question is, how is the teenagers' social media participation related to the significant pandemic events over the time? And what are the differences between teenagers with and without mental health concerns in this aspect? I also want to touch base on the other R's of research, regulation and replication. Because in this study, we collect online data. All the data are confidential and it's public available. Therefore, we were exempt from IRB review. In other projects that we are doing, for example, the project we are examining on improve the health of asthmatic children in public housing, where we conduct focus groups, interviews. This type of study will be applied to ethical review standards. Doing this, we protect our human subjects to ensure all the participation is voluntary, and also the human subjects are well protected, including their information, confidentiality, and nothing to avoid harm. Also, replication is another R of research. As during the process of our presentation, you see, including how we get the data, the research question, and also our methodology and findings are detailedly documented. And now doing this, we help future researchers or anybody interested to be able to replicate our study to see whether they produce the same results or not. So this is the way of documenting the procedures of the study is for the replication of study. And also for peers to examine whether this study is rigorous or not. Next slide, please. So at this graph, we'll just summarize what we found from our analysis. As you see this graph, it looks like a lot of information, right? But as you see the x-axis, you see there are 52, right? That represented the 52 weeks of the year 2020. And the y-axis represent the numbers of postings on the Reddit data. So when we look at there's a blue color line that shows the amount of teenagers posting on the Reddit data. So as you see, what we can see from this graph is teenagers' participation on Reddit fluctuated significantly along with the major pandemic events. Let's take an example of week 7. Week 7 in the year of 2020 is the week that US declared public health emergency of COVID-19. That's week 7. As soon as after this announcement from week 7, we observed that the postings on Reddit increased significantly. And then it reached to the peak at around week 10. That's when WHO declares pandemic and also US declared a national emergency. So as you see, teenagers are posting more frequently during this period of time as their reaction of the pandemic. Second slide, please. On this figure, we observe there are 4 lines, right? The green line represents teenagers who post in the Reddit community called suicidal watch. Anxiety. And the orange color represents teenagers post in suicide community. And the orange color represents the amount of teenagers in the depression. Okay, give me a second. Do I have questions in the chat box, right?
Yes, would you like to take questions now?
Yes, give me a second. Okay, so the first question, I'll take a couple of questions. The first question, why did you decide to work with public housing children? Are you still working there, and which properties? Yes, the answer is yes. This project is ongoing. It's funded and will be conducted with HU researchers and students. We are interested in public housing because the public housing conditions will impact children's health, especially respiratory, asthma health condition. And we want to design programs that can help such reduce asthma health triggers in public housing, and therefore to improve children's well-being. Yes, we are still doing it. And at the end of the session, I think we'll give information, more information about this project. Okay, Carrie has a very, very good question here. Was there information studied on transitioning back into the classroom? Not yet, but I think this is a very good question, and we'll identify this as our next step of the research. I'm sorry for going back to this figure 3. The x-axis represents still the numbers of weeks, and the y-axis represent actually the level of negative emotions. Because the software were able to identify how many children are posting, their posts include negative emotion, for example, sadness, frustration, nervous, etc. So we use this advantage of the software. We are able to find out what kind of youth are more likely to express negative emotions. And this research, this result show us in this graph, youth who has mental health concerns, that means youth with depression, youth has the anxiety, youth has suicidal watch, they're more likely to express negative emotions on their social media engagement. And at the same time, we also notice youth with anxiety, right, are significantly more likely to express negative emotions on their social media. Also, we saw the fluctuation, right, the change of the patterns of the lines of youth who has anxiety is more significant when compared to youth with anxiety and suicidal watch, and also youth without mental health concerns. So that gave us that shows that youth with anxiety are more vulnerable. They're more likely to be influenced, to be impacted by the major events of the pandemic. And they're more likely to express negative emotions in social media. Next slide, please. And this graph, again, the x-axis shows the 52 weeks of the year 2020. And this figure shows, we compare the blue line represent youth who visited, who has mental health concerns, and the orange line means the youth who doesn't have, the orange color line indicates youth who has mental health concerns, and the blue line indicates youth who doesn't have mental health concerns. By comparing these two, we also notice youth who has mental health concerns, such as depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation, they're more likely to post on social media. Their posting frequency are also significantly more likely to vary along with a change of pandemic events. So that means youth has mental health concerns, they're more vulnerable to the pandemic along with the major events during the pandemic. For example, in the event of announcing national emergency, announcing the public health emergency, including the development of vaccine, etc., youth with mental health are more likely to respond to such events and share their thoughts on social media. Now, what does this findings told us? Can we go to the next slide, please? So from the previous figures, what we can see is teenagers, their weekly Reddit, the social media participation, their posting and commenting frequency, their emotional expression were related with the significant pandemic events. Also, teenagers who have mental health concerns showed more negative emotion in their postings on comments in social media. Also, teenagers has mental health concerns almost post and comment twice as teenagers who doesn't have mental health concerns. That means teenagers who has mental health concerns has a stronger desire to express themselves in social media. Now, what does it mean of such results? So first of all, this is the first study to examine how pandemic may affect teenagers' social media engagement and how their emotion expression varies over a very long period of time during the pandemic year. This study also highlights there is a need to monitor and analyze teenagers' social media participation to understand how pandemic or in other events, historical traumatic events, how such events impact teenagers' emotional well-being. There's a need to analyze and monitor their social media participation. It also emphasized the importance of offering enough support for teenagers regarding their mental health well-being. More importantly, we find out teenagers with pre-existing mental health issues, for example, with anxiety, they are very vulnerable to traumatic effects of the pandemic. And this study calls especially special care for teenagers with mental health concerns. Another question in the chat box is, does the strong desire to post by teenagers with mental health disorders introduce bias? From Tanya. Yes. Would you mind clarify what you mean by bias here?
Ms. Lyons, if you feel free to, get on the mic to explain, please feel free to do so.
Thank you.
Yes,
I was wondering if there's an overabundance or excessive number of teens with mental health issues as opposed to the general public or general population that would not have an extra, abundance of teens with mental health issues.
I see. That's a very good question, Ms. Lyons. Is that related with our study basically study participants, right? So do we have more teenagers with mental health issues, right? Disorders that leads to our finding. We calculated the average posting in our, for example, figure 2 and figure 3. So the amount of teenagers with mental health disorders will not impact our finding because we calculated the average, not the total posting in our figure 2 and figure 3. But that's a very interesting question, because teenagers who has mental health disorders we're also more likely to seek for support. So that means they also may be more likely to post on social media as a way of seeking support and express emotions. The next question is, will the study be able to voluntarily individual interviews such as schools and communities? I think that's a very good point. We tried this, the study we are conducting in this project, we only included online data. I think being able to collect individual interviews to help to explain our phenomenon will be very helpful as well. And that's a very good question. Thank you, Karen.
Are there any other questions from the audience?
Many youth are prescribed harmful prescription drugs. This creates side effects on their logins.
Can I comment? I wanted to put it in the chat with all due respect. But my concern is that we are not catching the amount of data that we can get with the study. And that's because of the two things that I put in the chat. And I'd like to see it broadened to do that, because it is a lot of suffering, but I don't think the mass majority of it's being caught. And I think the younger age children are not being focused on. And I think one of the big impacts was on them because of lack of understanding and even information.
True.
This is a good study. I love this study. It's really necessary.
Oh, thank you so much for your comment. So Ms. Toy, I think your major concern is the prescription drugs, right? Ms. Toy,
not the prescription drugs.
Uh-huh.
It is state of mind. I don't think the pandemic is behind us, because DC Public Schools actually announced that all the children have to take a COVID test after this winter break. And here we go again. You know, it's like a roller coaster, and it's unexplained, you know, to parents and to the children. Our biggest concern is to the children. The pandemic is still with us. That's real about it. But the reality that is, how do they feel about it? It's very important to know as much as we can about what they feel about it.
Exactly. Thank you so much for the input. And also, I think this is consistent with the question by Karen, that will the study include voluntary individual interviews such as schools and communities, as well as the question from Ms. Harris, right? Is this regional study for DC or the DMV? So basically, we use this study, we use global data. So this is not only the data in the US, in DC or regional. This is because Reddit is a global community. By doing this large data, we are able to see, like, global wise, what are the teenagers' reactions, teenagers with or without mental health concerns, what are their how do they react on the different traumatic effects of pandemic. So by doing this, we're able to have a big picture, but the next step is really listening to the individual stories, conduct interviews with local communities and schools to listen to people's narrative, right? Combine this big data to listen to people's narrative to see exactly how it happened. I think that will be a strong component to help us to explain how the pandemic impact, youth mental health as well as how it's reflected on their online help seeking behavior. I hope this answered the question. And thank you. And I think Ms. Award will also help to bridge the impact of the implication of the study to how it will serve the community.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liu, for your insightful research about this very important and emerging issue that we have going on. Thank you all to those who asked questions, very thought-provoking questions about this research. And so we just want to welcome our next guest, our next speaker, Ms. Gail Avent. She is the founder and executive director of Total Family Care Coalition, a family-run organization located in a public housing complex in DC. Ms. Avent is also a community leader on the matters of family and youth supportive services, and she holds many different roles of advocacy for our community. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Avent as she shares what she has observed and experienced regarding youth and family mental health during and after the pandemic.
Thank you so much, and I'm happy to be here. And I hope I don't talk your head off because I'm known to be a talker too. So, but it's a pleasure to assess Howard University and providing information to let you know how research, which I think is very, very relevant, but also to give the research on the teenage point of view. But I'm here to say what my insight is coming during COVID, coming out of COVID, and like somebody shared, we still in COVID. So I hope to have a rich discussion, and you can stop me anytime you want to. But let me just tell you a little bit more about Total Family Care Coalition. We are unique. We are a family-run organization incorporated as such in the District of Columbia. We've been around about 18 years, and I intentionally position myself in public housing because oftentimes those families and youth, they have such rich history. They just like anybody else. They do what other folks do, but sometimes it's hard for people outside public housing to see that. So I'm always eager to be the person who tell the story, because sometimes the storyteller doesn't have the confidence to tell a story. I think their voice is going to be valued. So you always see Gail Avent popping up in arenas like this to say, you know, I'm here to report families are doing well in public housing. Their challenges are just like anybody else. So, and I want to speak to you tonight about some of the community view that we shared as an organization that stayed open. Our doors did not close because we value families. That means the parent and the child, that take in the natural support. Who is the natural support? We don't define family. That's part of our title, Total Family Care Coalition. We took the total something. And we stayed open because the phone started ringing. I couldn't leave those folks. We relied on the higher spirit to hold us together, to keep us sane, and to steady our hands to support them during the COVID. So that's what I want to share tonight. Next slide. So what did we see in family engagement? Because that's what I want to speak about. Community effects of COVID on family engagement. Because, you know, as I hear some of the questions tonight, you guys are spot on. I've been doing work in the District of Columbia since 2004 because I had a personal need for myself. And family engagement is very important. And when there's a disaster, Everybody running for the hills. It's devastated to families and caregivers. I'm not going to underscore that. It was devastated to human life because, as we learned, there was a public health emergency that was recorded increases in children depression and poor physical health. You couldn't go out to the doctor. They said, stay in. And that's what we did. Children who had mental health, and I can speak on that. In the District of Columbia, I've been doing children integrated behavior health, which means mental health and physical health for 18 years. And I can tell you, there is a small population of children who regularly receive mental health services and who come to the forefront of needing that mental health services. And I love the research that Dr. Liu did, not only including DC, but in global, because we have to figure out what to do, you know, and how to, as a parent, the number one issue was, how do I continue to support my child? What's going to happen to physical health? And, you know, those are legitimate concerns because what do we know? What do we know? If you don't get a toothache looked at, like I had to a couple of weeks ago, it becomes infected. So it was enough dealing with COVID, but we had to deal with additional things too. Next slide. So underneath that was devastating families and caregivers. Go back to the last one. But it changed the parenting style. Can you imagine? You know, I often say, parents was looking forward to sending Johnny and Susie off to school because we had 4 to 5 hours to stay behind and maybe get a nap in, look at the story, get us a cup of coffee, come back home, maybe clean up something. But COVID didn't go nowhere. It was like, stop. We had to be there with the children. We had to redefine family dynamics. We couldn't send a kid out. You can't send that kid out in the community. It was no movement, total no movement. And it was difficult. Oh my God. We always say we first teachers, but that became a reality in COVID. We had to become not only first teachers in speaking it, but in doing it. And we had, as parents, not me, but you know, I'm just figuratively speaking, parents had to become educators. They had to support the education need. And I think that was mentioned early. How do you do that? Tell me, if you got a parent who has a mental health concern themselves, a parent that has a substance use problem themselves, do we really expect them to just jump up and become a teacher overnight? It takes time. It takes a process, you know, and the parents were doing the best they can, but they was feeling, oh, I'm feeling stressed out now because the school has put this important task on me to become a teacher. But did anybody consider you may have more than one child in that family? That means it's more than one grade in that household. Now we become expert on teaching math, geography, algebra, Spanish. I don't know what the subject was, but did the parent feel like they were supported? They was afraid. We was getting phone calls off the hook. It was like, oh, we don't have Wi-Fi. So we said, come to our office because we in public housing, use our Wi-Fi. We don't have computers. I sent an email blast out. We need computers. We need help, you know, and parents was mentally exhausted. Really, I don't know what to do. Let me just go to sleep. Let me just go to sleep, sleep it over, you know, be real Van Winkle. When I wake up, maybe it's over, but it was no over. You know, we saw from the graph, we thought 10 days was going to be a limitation because that was what we was led to believe. But here how we was hitting all the 6 markers on the research. Representation. You know, could we say that we saw people of color? Did we see anybody look like us? But DC, I'm telling you, I thank the mayor, I thank the director for public health who came on TV to constantly keep us informed about what is the realism. We ain't need no sugarcoating. I need a real deal. That's what the parents were telling me. Tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. And then, you know, the research even support that was a recorded increase. Children depression, well, you know, sometimes we say children have mental health that's dormant. And when there's a traumatic experience, it manifests. That means it come to life. So I'm not surprised how many youth, teenagers was reaching the social media because we need information by any means necessary. Next slide. So some of the social factors that were attributed to mental health challenge, let's talk about that. Let's have a real conversation. There was lack of emotional support for parents and children. But you say, well, how could we do that? We couldn't reach through Zoom and hug anybody. Nobody was asking that. We found during COVID, people closed their doors. Providers closed their doors. So when we reach out to try to get that friendly voice or warm voice, it wasn't there. You know, people hinge on relationship. I talk about it all the time. It was constraints on interpersonal relationship. If you had a relationship and you were single, you couldn't have that person come in your house. You know, you were scared of them. That's my boyfriend. That's my paramour. That's my uncle. That's my grandma. That's my mom. Do you know how many people was telling me they had to go to the window and say hi to the parents who was in nursing home? This lady was telling me, she was a social worker. She said, Gail, I have to go and leave food on my father's porch because I can't go in the house. I can't. So we were scrambling. How many people couldn't get a hug? You know, I'm a hugger. I felt like, oh, I can't get a hug, something wrong. But it was also restriction on community and social movement. You couldn't go bowling. You couldn't tell the child go out and play. You better have that child go outside. You know, parents were scared. Come on back in here. I don't know what's out there. We didn't know. We didn't know how it was being transmitted. Was the wind blowing the wrong way? Was it too many people come in the house? Oh, let's count the people. Can't have more than 10 people in the house. So what did you do? What did you do? And that was the question. It was no space for me to reflect. I couldn't even do it because I'm the director, got staff. I had to encourage my staff to come to work, don't come to work, or figure out how to telework. You know, we were used to, we couldn't imagine having a world where we couldn't walk out and enjoy the sunshine. We couldn't imagine somebody saying, don't go outside. We America, free, land of the free. Land of the free. We can go wherever we want to with, you know, certain limitation, but we couldn't do that. We couldn't. And then there were restrictions, no space for reflection and time to relax. But bring up the next one. Here's the kicker. Uncertainty of life. You heard it before. My speaker that came before was talking about the same thing. We was all on the same page. Who's gonna be next? When is gonna hit us? Can I even trust my son to come in? He doesn't live with me full time. Can I trust he can come in and I can feel relaxed? And then we had our, I say our matriarch and patriarch, grandma and grandpa. Don't even talk about that. How many people we just can imagine that was not gonna be here tomorrow. We couldn't. And Karen say, I'm a public housing resident and I would love to work with total family. where I live, Miss Avent. I think I know this Karen Settles, so we've been on projects together. But you know, somebody had to love the people who people don't think deserve love. That's me. That's what the work we do, because it's no difference. Economics is not the factor. It's whether or not you have a space where people can feel welcoming. You say a kind word when it's even challenging for you to say that kind word. You know, and respect what we go through. Respect the need to find ourselves in opportunities for research. Understand what the regulation is. And each one can teach one. We can. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest things I heard in families, nobody gave me grace. Nobody said, well, job well done. Nobody say, I can imagine how you can become a teacher to 3 students in 3 different grade levels at the same time with little notice. Overnight, really, overnight. We didn't say job well done, parents. We didn't say, I'm here to give you some food, but we found the food because we know what the need is. And number 1 is food and housing. So we're gonna take that off your plate. We see that as low-hanging fruit. Maintaining family well-being, we're gonna find ways to be creative to say, next time, here's activities. Tell us what be good for you. And grief and loss and loved one is social and emotional losses. We didn't even give people permission to say, we can help you virtually go through grief and loss process. You don't have to feel like you have to cut your heart off because the loved one is gone. No, acknowledge them, celebrate them in the way you can. We didn't give them permission to say, it's gonna be okay. We didn't say how to heal together. You know, we the expert. We supposed to, I'm not an expert, I'm just here to bear and to be the storyteller of what I and my workers experienced during COVID, how families felt. How did you want to say, thank you, Ms. Jones, thank you. In the schools, I work with schools to say, we could have done a better job. We could have done a better job. But we're gonna admit that. Next slide. We can. You know how we can do that? We don't put off tomorrow what we can do today. We work together now. This is the opportunity. We have the latitude and the opportunity to say to that family or to that person who had hesitation, I value your understanding of how research might fail you, or how you view research fail people of color in the past. But can we agree to disagree? Can we say we need to do better? Because we all have family. We have the understanding and the knowledge and the maturity to understand that there's gonna be life and there's gonna be death. But sometimes we don't have to understand how quickly it can be accelerated. We don't. But if we encourage each one, oh, you know what? Here's something. My granddaughter told me the other day that she's taking place in the Howard University research project. I was pleasantly surprised because I hadn't talked to her about that. I hadn't said anything to her. She said, Grandma, I'm taking place in a study where they talking about people who had COVID and people who didn't have COVID to find out what the effect. Let's do the planning ahead. Let's put more people who look like us in position to say, let's give science and research a chance. Here's the little knowledge I know. Let's compare notes. Maybe there's a medium, there is a avenue that we can say, I was skeptical before, but let's give it a try. Revocation, let's do it now. Because when something else happens, we're not going to have that opportunity. We can do it in calmness. We can do it strategically, you know, and somebody was using the word yesterday, concretely. We can do it together, but even if you say, I don't want it, that's good too, because that can go into research and say why you didn't say it. But we will hope that people understand that mentally coming out of COVID, that's what I call it now, a mom came into my office and she was saying, my children are asking me to get out of bed. Now, she done the hard work during COVID. Now she exhausted. Remember I say parents was exhausted? They still are. They still are. And the children are coming and say, Mom, we want you to be a mom. Help us. You know, get up. What can we do for you? I find ways to have parents understand, yeah, it's tough. It's tough being a parent. Ask for help. That's what Mr. Rogers say. Fred Rogers say his mom told him when he felt like it was a problem, a challenge, look to the helpers. You guys are first responders. You're the helpers. And we have to look to each other. He's a helper in all of us. He's a wonderful person laying dormant, want to pick up that gut and say, I'm here. I want to help. I want to see what we can do. Because do we really want to go through what we came through before? Do we want that? Well, we can see some of it. We can see, I'm not a scientist. I don't know anything. I just talk from little information I know. And what I do is share information and knowledge about the benefits of participating in research to others, so that we can reduce the stigma associated with research and demonstrate a collaboration between academia and community-based organizations, a marriage that I would love to see. I would love to see. What do we do moving ahead? Just like I say, parents and caregivers want to be better equipped to make good decisions driven by research. We'll listen to you. We ain't gonna throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're gonna listen, because then that gives us a greater autonomy to make informed decisions. And that's what I want to project. And research can bring a clearer understanding of health matters, not just for mental health, but physical health. We need whole health to keep us mentally well and have a mental health foundation. We can't do one without the others, they say. And I think maybe that's the last quotation. So we want to look to resources, help community organization identify some, gaining knowledge and skills and using technology. Don't have parents up there scrambling again. This don't work, I don't know. And they couldn't find the on button. Don't be like me. I got a laptop. I don't know how to turn it on. I had to mess around to figure out how to do it. And then help families stay connected when school closed. They get it. They know what the urgency is, but they don't want you to judge them because they don't know. Then they won't ask questions again. And find viable resources to eliminate barriers to remote learning. I'm sure we can come up with something. What do you think? And thank you for allowing me to talk to you guys this evening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Avent, for your valuable experiences and your wisdom and sharing with us. I want to read Ms. Toy's comment. She says that she appreciates you and all that you do, and she would like you to continue shedding the knowledge and that she understands how much time you invest, but a well-needed investment. Thank you. And Dr. Williams says the same. Thank you for your knowledge and insights, Ms. Avent.
Thank you. It's always good to come talk and to share what we see. You know, we call ourselves boots on the ground. So it's wonderful to see that the community at the community level is still viable, still thriving, and we moving forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, okay, so Paula Blue is asking if you could leave your contact information, Ms. Avent. We'll also be sure to leave all the contact information in the follow-up email, including Dr. Liu's study that she's doing on asthma health in children in public health housing. So we'll be sure that everyone gets that as well. Just want to leave room for any other questions for Ms. Avent, any other comments. Please feel free to come on screen and unmute your mic if anyone wants to share.
I really have enjoyed listening to everyone. This is my first Zoom conference, probably in about 18 months. And since I don't have smaller children in my home, but I do interact with teens in my church and through other outlets and other family members, this has been very informative.
Hello, Ms. Stovall, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, you can go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that I really enjoyed, I was very encouraged by the information that was being presented this evening.
Hi, I think we lost you, Ms. Stovall. While we're waiting for you, we'll have, I believe, Ms. Karen Settle.
Yeah, yes. I just wanted to thank Gail for, I had worked with Gail before. I just wanted to thank her for the work she does.
Thank you, Karen. It's good that you came on.
Yes.
We'll talk. Karen and I go back a long years, so I'm gonna put a little history on this. We worked on the mental health committee that was citywide for public housing across the city. And so this has been a focus of Karen and mine and everyone, because, you know, like I was saying before, sometimes families in public housing not seen as being regular folks, but they are. And I love them, and I love doing the work with them.
Yeah, we worked together a long time with mental health, and actually some of the things now that are going on with the COVID, it comes in handy for what we've done, Gail. So you know that's a good thing.
It is. Visionaries.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing. That is fantastic, Ms. Settles. I'm glad to hear that you and Ms. Avent work together for our community. I also want to invite Ms. I believe Ms. Stovall is back on now, if you are available.
Ms. Toya?
Okay, Ms. Toya.
Yes, okay. Good evening to everyone. And I want to thank everyone and especially inviting me in. And also Miss Gail, you know, much success to you, and I appreciate all that you do. And, you know, I follow your work. And Dr. Liu, am I pronouncing that right? I am well familiar with your work as well. And so I just wanted to, you know, give a shout out and thank you all, because I understand how much work is involved in getting the information out to the communities. And I will continue to keep abreast of everything that's going on. And again, Ms. Gail, thank you so, so very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you for the kind words.
Sure, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Ms. Toya. I'll invite Ms. Rosalind Stovall now, if you are available.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. First of all, to Gail Avent, really enjoyed your presentation from the heart. Both of the presenters that did really good research on it. And like, as I was stating, I don't have small children in my home, but I interact with children through other venues, through my church and other family members who have small children. And again, just sometimes we just have to take a step back, because if you're not directly involved in something, you're not as acutely aware of exactly what's happening. You see bits and pieces on the news. So I thank you for putting this presentation together so that people like me who are retired and who maybe have other responsibilities are not as day-to-day focused on the events, but we do see the effects. I will say that, because we were having a conversation a few days ago with family within the family, and we were talking about the children today and how it seems as though they're lost. And one of the reasons that they are lost is because of what they have just gone through with COVID and the isolation and not being with their peers. And the fact that in a lot of cases, their parents are not even equipped to help them, because the parents are going through similar types of feelings and depression as well. So again, to Ms. Avent and her organization, kudos to you and those organizations such as yours that reach out into the community and that can offer the kind of services and the kind of care and really make a difference to the communities that you serve. I know that this is a very difficult time, and even though we're not walking around masks up every day, we're still in the throes of a pandemic, and there are still lingering issues that are being dealt with as far as depression is concerned as well. And I'd also like to thank Karen Peters for putting this information out and inviting me to your conference this evening, sharing the information with some affiliates that we are involved in. And again, thank you very much for the in-depth information. It was very helpful and very informative.
Thank you, Ms. Stovall, for your kind word. It's my pleasure to serve. I serve people. I serve needs. So thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Stovall. And thank you everyone who shared. We want to transition now. Thank you, Ms. Avent and Dr. Liu, for your amazing presentations. Transition to Ms. Karen Parker. Ms. Karen.
Thank you very much, Elisha. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
What a time
Yes.
we had this evening. Thank you. What a time we had this evening. Again, very special thank you to our speakers, Ms. Avent, Dr. Liu, everyone who shared their insights. Just briefly, we wanted to kind of go a little bit backwards and talk about how one of the greater impacts of the ability to participate in research is to actually share your voice. So we have a study ongoing right now. It is entitled Community Conversations About COVID. You see the flyer in front of you. It's an opportunity for you to share with us in a way that is not going to be invasive, what your experience has been with COVID, during COVID, and what's important to you about life beyond COVID-19. So it's a two-part survey. The link is going to be posted in the chat. We will also send it out to everyone after this call, everybody who attended this call. You can participate once. That is, you have one opportunity to log into the system and really go through, look at the questions, answer them to the best of your ability and your experience. If you have to stop before you're finished, you can log back in and complete the survey. The only time we ask for your name and address is so that we can send you your compensation. If you complete both parts of the survey, we will be able to send you the full compensation, which is $100. You don't have to complete the full survey if you feel that it's too invasive, and all of the information about what it's about and the types of questions we will be asking before you even start the survey. There will be a document called the Informed Consent document that you can read through. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can contact us at rcmi-cec@howard.edu. As well, my phone number is at the bottom of this flyer, and I'll just read it out for you. It's area code 202-806-2990. Again, we will send this link for you. It's a very special link. You can click on the link and log into the study. Okay, thank you very much for the time, Elisha. I know that we've gone over, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the study that we have ongoing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karen. And so we will be sure to send this in our email, and we will try to share it in the chat. Thank you again to everyone who are in this call for your participation, for your time, and for your stories. We are at the end of our session. When you leave the call, a very short survey will come up. So please take a moment to just give us your feedback. We'd love to hear about what you've learned and how we can improve our future events. Finally, please follow up with our email. I shared it in the chat. Karen also shared it. It's rcmi-cec@howard.edu. Or add your information in the chat if you feel comfortable. If you would like to join our mailing list to keep up with our future events and our programming. Like I mentioned earlier, Part 2 of our COVID and Youth Mental Health series will be on March 23rd at the same time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where we will introduce the topic of mental health first aid to address this issue. Please register using the link that you see right there on the slide or in the chat. We wish every single one of you a safe and mindful walk. Until next time, good night.